All right, guys, last one. It should make you feel good. I hope you're ready. Woo! That's right. Don't be like Ruth Bader. Wake up. Let's get this party finished. All right, so let's look. Here we go. We're going to be looking at period 6.7. We're going to be looking at the demographic and environmental developments of the 20th century. All right, so although the Industrial Revolution generated overall improvements in living standards, which is good, it also caused some atmospheric pollution, which is not good in industrialized cities. Environmental challenges of the 20th and the 21st centuries included efforts to resolve some of these problems. Poor environmental quality from industrial and automotive emissions. All right, potential threats, all right, to the environment also resulted from oil spills and the devastation of warfare and the danger of a potential nuclear plant meltdown. Since 1914, warfare, famine, disease, and migration have affected global population. We should say explosion, but just distribution. All right, where people live. Most migrants move from developing to developed nations in search of improved economic, not conditions, but opportunities. That's right. All right. Okay, the first major topic is the war years. World War I, back in 1914, resulted in the deaths of 10 million Europeans and eliminated nearly a generation of young European men. That's right. The lack of potential husbands forced many European women to remain, there's not a lot of men, they don't get married, remain unmarried. The drastic decline of marriages lowered the European, no marriages, no births. It lowered the birth rate and population growth in the future generations. Bombs and troop movements destroyed cities, factories, and agricultural land. And then we'll have, just a few decades later, 35 million people lost their lives in World War II. All right, because of post-war boundary changes, hundreds of thousands of displaced persons were forced to relocate. All right, topic 2. Now let's look at population changes. Rapid population growth, especially in developing nations, became a present concern of the 21st century. Sometimes religious and cultural beliefs prohibited efforts at population control. These are governments trying to control the population. In the early 20th century, efforts to eradicate diseases and improve sanitation led to marked population increases in developing nations in Asia. In Africa, which began the century with low population levels, high birth rates and lower mortality rates resulted in significant population increases. The population trends continued in spite of the high incidence, what's that disease in Africa, the big one, of AIDS in Africa. Despite advances in healthcare, those living in, it should say, poverty, those living in poverty continue to struggle with the diseases such as cholera, tuberculosis, and malaria. New epidemics emerged. All right, I spelled that wrong. It'll be all right. Such as the influenza pandemic of 1918 and 1919. Look it up. It's crazy. Ebola and AIDS. The instances of disease such as Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, and diabetes, they all increased because of increases in life expectancy and lifestyle changes. In Europe, the population decline and labor shortages, because so many people have been killed. Oops, I can't spell yet. all right, of the 1950s and 60s caused Western European governments to seek workers from Southern Europe and a non-Western world. Many of these guest workers migrate to West Europe from the West Indies, North Africa, Turkey, and Pakistan. Guest workers received very low wages and were often subjected to discrimination and violence from Western Europeans. This discrimination heightened in the 1980s because of a slowdown in European economies and the growing size of the guest worker population. Not all immigrants were welcomed. Here's a new word for some of you guys. Xenophobia develops, which is an intense fear of foreigners, often was shown in protests, race riots, and government policies restricting citizenship. All right, now, in contrast to European demographic patterns, Eastern Asian countries experienced high population growth. By the 1980s, for example, the new South Korean country had the highest population density in the world. As a result, many South Koreans, they migrated to other countries. The government of South Korea encouraged its people to limit the size of the families, while Japanese government, check out what this is, addressed its ever-increasing population by promoting birth control and abortion. All right, check this out. The People's Republic of China attempted to control its huge population by instituting policies designed to limit family size. In the 1960s, only one child per family was allowed. These programs greatly reduced the Chinese birth rate at the expense of forced abortions and sterilizations. Female, these are little girls, infanticide, like suicide, increased. Other infants were hidden among family members in rural areas where record keeping was not as accurate as in urban areas. By 2007, the one-child policy had relaxed in some regions of China to permit urban couples who themselves were only children to give birth to 2 children. All right, in Central Asia, the Soviet Union experienced, and they're always dealing with this, ethnic divisions as a result of population change. By the 1970s, check this out, the Muslim population in the southern Soviet republics had grown so rapidly and presented a threat to the dominance of the Russian culture. All right, our next topic, efforts to improve agricultural production. Let's make more food for everybody. All right, one of the solutions to growing population concerns was to improve, we just said it, agriculture. That's right, productivity in developing nations. And the solution was the Green Revolution, was a program that increased crop yields through the use of high-yield, disease-resistant crops, as well as fertilizers and pesticides and efficient irrigation methods, especially effective in India and other parts of Asia. It also experienced some success in Latin America. Now, the Green Revolution was criticized. All right, criticized. Whoops. All right, for its use of pesticides and fertilizers that caused pollution and cancer. Also, chemicals were, oh my gosh, this is all it comes in here, expensive. That's right. Making the program more accessible to large landowners and agricultural businesses, not the small man. In Egypt, check this out, President Nasser attempted to improve agricultural productivity through the construction of the Aswan Dam. Although the project provided additional farmland, its interference in the normal flood patterns of the Nile River deprived the land of the fertile silt deposited by the Nile's flooding. Also, parasites that caused, check this out, blindness appeared in great numbers, and increased deposits of salt were found in the soil. All right, next topic, migration patterns. After World War I, the population of Latin America swelled. It exploded, all right, as immigrants continued to pour into Argentina and Brazil, as well as into Latin American countries. All right, urban areas grew rapidly. Latin America experienced sizable migration within the continent as the inhabitants of rural areas migrated to urban areas in search of what we're looking for, employment. That's right, all trying to find a job. Newcomers often were forced to live in shanty towns on the outskirts of urban areas. Sometimes these settlements were incorporated into urban areas, resulting in somewhat improved living conditions within the former shanty towns. All right, now in the 1920s, workers from Mexico crossed into the United States at the same time that Central Americans were crossing into Mexico in search of, what are they looking for? Looking for jobs, that's right, or employment. All right, during the 1940s, the United States set up programs with Mexico to provide, what are we going to provide? All right, employment and provide jobs. All right, hundreds of thousands of migrants, both legal and illegal, continue to cross the border into the United States. Throughout Latin America, migration in search of employment occurred across national borders. All right, other migrants reached or attempted to reach the United States to escape political oppression and warfare. This last group included migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and El Salvador.